Hi guys, this is Ian here and welcome back to another video of our ongoing Python series. And in this very video we are going to discuss some of the most important features of Python, and due to these features Python is still one of the most widely used programming languages out there in the world. So without any further inutile discussions, let's get right down to business and do what we came here for. The first feature that we are going to discuss is Python being free and open source. Now what do I mean by this? This means Python is free and can be accessed from anywhere out there in the world, and you don't have to pay a dime for it, and you are able to use Python code in it and build softwares, applications, or whatever that you want to do with Python without having to pay for a single dime. These languages include Python being one. You have JavaScript, PHP, Rust, and so on. On the other hand, you have some languages out there which are paid and not open source. Now what do I mean by this? This means that you have to pay for these languages to be able to use them and build softwares or applications or whatever that you want to build with these. So these languages don't come for free. You have to pay for these languages to be able to use them. And these languages are called non-open source and not free. Non-open source and not free or non-free. And these languages include, as we discussed, Microsoft's .NET, Swift, Viper, and Java, C++, and so on. Now let's move on to the next feature that we have here, which is platform independency or cross-platform independency. Now, what do I mean by this? What is it actually? See, for example, you have written a piece of code. It could be any number of lines. Say you have written a piece of code which consists of 6 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, due to some reasons or restrictions, it could be due to security reasons or it could be due to license issues, and this code that you have written, say you have written it on Windows and you're running it on Windows and you are facing some issues or complications. Now what you want to do, you want to move to a more secure platform or an operating system. So what you want to do, let's say you want to move to Linux due to it being a more secure platform. So what happens is, due to Python being platform independent, you don't have to make any changes in the code. Rather, you can use the same piece of code with the same number of lines of code on a different platform. For example, in our case, we want to use it in Linux, so you don't have to make any changes. You can use the same code on Linux without having to make any changes in the code, and you will be able to do this with the help of a Python virtual machine. But in case of platform-dependent language such as C, what you have to do there, you have to write different pieces of code for different platforms or operating systems for you to be able to use those applications or pieces of code on those separate platforms respectively. Now let's discuss the third feature that we have here, which is Python being an interpreted language. Third one that we have here is Python being an interpreted programming language. Now what does this mean? Say, for example, again, you have a piece of code consisting of 4 lines, right? Now what happens is the Python virtual machine or the Python interpreter checks this code line by line. Say we have 4 lines of code, it checks the code line by line. So if you get an error, say you get a syntax error or any error at line 2, so what the Python virtual machine does is it throws you an error when you run the code, or rather, well, it just highlights that syntax error at that line, and it tells you, hey, there is a syntax error at this line of code, and you would want to fix this for you to be able to run this code smoothly and without any errors. So that is what an interpreted language is, where the virtual machine of these interpreted languages checks the code line by line to fix, or rather to highlight, any syntax errors that you might have made while writing the code. Now let's move on to the next feature, which is dynamically typed programming language. I'm not going to discuss this feature here because I have already discussed this feature in the previous video. So I would like you to do is go back to that previous video, watch it, and then come back to this video and continue watching it. So the next feature that we are going to discuss is Python being an embedded language. Now what is this Python's embeddability? It means that not only can we write code in Python, but we can also use Python code in other programming languages, such as we have an implementation of Python written in C, which is CPython, and we can use this in C programming language. We have a few more, such as Jython, which is an implementation of Python which can be used in Java applications. Jython, implementation of Python which can be used. And can be used in Java. applications. We have one more, which is IronPython. Again, an implementation of Python, which can be used in Microsoft's .NET. Okay, now let's move on to another feature, which is Python having a huge library support. Say you have written a piece of code and you want to add some functionality to it, but if you want to add that functionality, you might have to write that code, separate code from the scratch, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to make your code too long, and you want to reduce the time that you want to spend on your code. So what you can do is you can make use of these already made libraries, which are basically nothing but already written codes, which can be used any time that you want to increase functionality to your code, or rather which can be used to get some functionality to your code. For example, you want to get the square root of a number. You want to get the square root of a number. Now, in order for you to add this to your code, you might need to code this functionality from scratch, and you don't want to do that. You want to save time, and you don't want to make your code too long. So what you can do is you can make use of already coded libraries which have this functionality, which is square root of a number, calculating the square root of a number. So you can make use of these modules or libraries to add functionality, to add this functionality to your code. And you don't have to use many lines for it. All you had to do is import these libraries or modules and make use of the functionalities that these libraries give. So guys, these were some of the most important features of Python, and due to these, as we already discussed, due to these features, Python is still one of the most widely used programming languages out there. Now there are more features of Python, not just these 6 features, but there are plenty of other important features of Python which we are not going to discuss, because that would make this video very long, and we don't want to do that, and I don't want to bore you guys. So this is it for this video, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below and let me know if you like this video or not.